Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with this week in cannabis news from August 29th to September 4th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. We're going to start with this news from New Cannabis Ventures out of Illinois, as they've published their recent adult use sales for August, and Illinois adult use cannabis sales slipped 4.6% sequentially to $129.4 million in August. Was to be expected as we fall back a little bit from another big month in July. But we can see sales of $129.4 million decreased 4.6% sequentially in August. Compared to a year ago, growth was the same as the 6.2% rate in July. And so despite the fact that we expected that these extra 185 dispensaries to come online hopefully sooner than later, they've been delayed and will likely come on hopefully in the new year in early 2023. And so for that reason, it's good to see some year-over-year growth despite having the same amount of dispensaries as last year at least. And so you can see the progress since legalizing for adult use in January of 2020 as we move along through time. 2021 adult use sales of $1.3 billion increased 106% over 2020. Illinois and year-to-date sales of $886.26 million have increased 16% so far in 2022. So again, highlighting with the same amount of dispensaries, year-over-year sales up 16%. Obviously, as these new 185 dispensaries come online, so as opposed to having just 110, we'll have 295 in total. That will help drive, another boost in sales, at least for Illinois in the coming year. Again, when they come online, finally, hopefully early 2023. During August, sales to non-residents decreased from 31.1% in July to 31.8% of total sales as well. And so when the state reports medical cannabis data for August, New Cannabis Ventures will expand on that. But that is for adult use in Illinois, so good to see sales heading in the right direction overall when we take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And with that, just wanted to share this timely clip, so thanks Mark at #_flows for sharing this, reiterating that it's time to keep your promise to decriminalize cannabis, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, because honestly, as time goes on, you just look worse and worse. And so please, just for the sake of the American people and what everyone has left, try to do the right thing. And we honestly can't anticipate that you will, but just going to share this clip again. Just so silly to think how I bought into their word salad so naively with wishful thinking back then. But obviously, as time goes on, you grow stronger, you learn some lessons. And just reiterating, Senator Kamala Harris says the Biden administration would decriminalize cannabis and expunge cannabis use convictions. And I just want to highlight the irony here. Fortunately, this is Kamala and Biden saying this, and it's not Schumer, Wyden, or Booker saying this. There is no time for incrementalism. There needs to be significant change in the design of the system. When we've learned from the last year and a half that in Congress, nothing big gets done, you need incremental reform. And so that's why we're hoping for the SAFE Plus, clemency like they promised. I mean, all they have to do is keep their campaign promises, and the American people would be floored. And one could argue that the Dems could actually save the Senate and House in November if they descheduled cannabis tomorrow, because that is a cause that Americans could actually rally behind. But we can't hold our breaths, as they haven't kept any of their promises thus far. And while we hope to be pleasantly surprised from now until November, just a reminder that we must hold them accountable for their lies if they don't.
Under a Biden-Harris administration, we will decriminalize the use of marijuana.
We'd rather descheduling, but
expunge all marijuana use convictions and end incarceration for drug use alone.
Still waiting. Yeah.
So this is no time, from I think our collective perspective, this is no time for half-stepping.
It's time for no stepping.
This is no time for incrementalism. We need to deal with the system. And there needs to be significant change in the design of the system.
Oh, Kamala, you are the worst. But the good news is we have more data as to why these politicians are delaying, because some of their donors, Big Pharma, are paying them to do so. Schmuck Schumer, I should say. But Marijuana Moment does report, as we have more data, pharmaceutical industry suffers billions in losses after states legalize cannabis, new study finds. So this gives us more understanding and reasoning as to why they are delaying and not working in the will of the American people. Unfortunately, as the pharmaceutical industry takes a serious economic hit after states legalize cannabis, with an average market loss of nearly $10 billion for drug makers per each legalization event, according to a first-of-its-kind study. Wow. So the peer-reviewed research article published in the journal PLOS ONE on Wednesday looked at stock return and prescribed drug sales data for 556 pharmaceutical companies from 1996 to 2019, analyzing market trends before and after the enactment of medical and adult-use cannabis legalization laws at the state level. The stock returns were 1.5 to 2% lower at 10 days after legalization, the study authors found, Returns decreased in response to both medical and recreational legalization for both generic and drug brand makers, as investors anticipate a single legalization event to reduce drug maker annual sales by $3 billion on average. So not only brand drug makers, but generic makers as well. So that's Advil, Tylenol, then generic Advil and generic Tylenol, where cannabis can also have similar, medical effects and provide relief for people. As our results show that cannabis legalization is associated with a decrease in the stock market returns for pharmaceutical firms. So that is cannabis taking a lot of market share from a lot of companies, and they don't like that. Hence why Big Pharma is lobbying so much to delay any sort of cannabis reform progress. There are plenty of anecdotal reports, database studies, and observational analyses that have signaled that some people use cannabis as an alternative to traditional pharmaceutical drugs like opioid-based painkillers and sleep medications. I think it's a lot of people, not just some anymore. And so there's a lot more information here, but I invite you just pause to read or to grab the link below if you wanted to read into it. But this is also the study with the raw data from Plus One. U.S. cannabis laws projected to cost generic and brand pharmaceutical firms billions. So this gives us more understanding as to why things are the way they are right now. But of course, if we can push for change, hopefully we can make change happen in the right direction, for the will of the American people and for everyone around the globe that wants cannabis freed. And so with that, I wanted to share some snippets from investment firms. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this. Echelon on U.S. cannabis. Meaningful free cash flow going forward, hopefully, especially once 280E is repealed. That would be amazing. Charts positively inflected after 1.5 years. Turnaround portends potential regulatory catalyst. Consensus estimates reduced. Expectations resized. It seems the space looks compelling. Buy across consumer caps per risk appetite. So these are just a bunch of snippets from it. Take these with a grain of salt as well, because these are just investment firms as well that likely have more information than we do, but still doesn't necessarily mean that it's true or that they're going to be right. So just wanted to share these snippets from Echelon as well, so you can pause to read. Executive overview seems that they are bullish on U.S. cannabis, so we do love to hear that. U.S. cannabis fundamentals, 1/3, MSO's financial track record, and so you can pause to read for a bit more info on their growth from 2019 and what they're looking for into 2023. We've got 2022 outlook, 2 out of 4, state legalization, so just more information on new markets that are coming online and markets that are potentially going to reform for adult use cannabis and launch adult use programs that only have medical right now. And then free cash flow outlook, how long it might take them to produce cash flow from operations, so you can pause to read. And this again coming from Echelon Capital Markets. And so Todd, thank you for sharing this one from Shooter McGinley on U.S. cannabis. So we got another one, August 2022 monthly valuation update. Cannabis equities outperformed the broader market in August with U.S. multi-state operators, MSOs, up 2%, and Canadian LPs up 10% versus the SP at negative 4%. So you can pause to read for the whole thing, but we would largely attribute the July rally to statements by members of Congress suggesting a greater sense of urgency in advancing the Safe Banking Act, given the bill's greater level of bipartisan support and potential that losses by Democrats in the House and Senate in November might make it more difficult to advance reforms at the federal level in 2023, hence passing some incremental reform in the lame duck session, something that we keep hearing over and over. So pause to read if you wanted more info on that. Then we've got Roth on U.S. cannabis, so thanks Todd for sharing this one. Weekly rehash, fall markets busy, news flow around federal legislation Safe Plus. And so we can pause to read the whole thing, but just to summarize, as a result, based on all the changes that I've covered in my last few weeks' videos, as a result, these leading senators are now vocalizing plans to pursue alternative incremental legislation, which we believe will be the shaping of a Safe Plus bill. And so again, more firms are reiterating what they think, similar to what we've been thinking as we watch things develop over time. And with that though, just wanted to share this very nice one from Verano, because the Climb Act, is federal cannabis banking reform coming? I fucking hope so, and it would be great if the Climb Act is added into that Safe Plus bundle, because just to reiterate this one from Verano, what does the Climb Act do? In its own words, the Climb Act intends to amend any applicable federal law to permit access to community development, small business, minority development, and any other public or private financial capital sources for investment in and financing of cannabis-related legitimate businesses, and to amend the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 to create a safe harbor for national securities exchanges to list the securities of issuers that are cannabis-related legitimate businesses. This could reverse something from all the way back 1934. That could be huge. To put it plainly, the Climb Act would treat legitimate cannabis and cannabis-related companies the same as any other business, where federal law would otherwise interfere with third parties' ability to provide standard business services, i.e. banking and insurance. So that would mean no more 280E, from my understanding, and it would provide the safe harbor that would allow people and investors with big money, institutions, to invest directly in U.S. MSOs and U.S. cannabis operators without having to go through the hurdles that they have to go through with compliance departments and filing, trying to invest in companies that are federally illegal. It just gives them a lot of hoops to jump through they'd rather not, and this is essentially the solution to that would allow MSOs to uplist as well, and all the things that we've been waiting for. And so just wanted to share that to add some context to what we are hoping for is added into the eventual Safe Plus. While last one, Todd Harrison, this one is a bit more, this one's from Bloomberg on Northeast, but talking about certain cannabis markets. New York pot sales make the Northeast a budding industry power if New York can launch on time. As this one, I think, posted September 1st, 2022 in the morning. And so this is as of September 1st, but number one, New York sales can reach $3 billion in 2026. Obviously beneficial for New York to get started and launch this program sooner than later. So you can pause to read for more information what Bloomberg has to say on New York, but I wanted to share this one that we got from August 31st because it's just more annoying delays from regulators that, claim to be for social justice, but their actions are basically doing everything in their power to shoot the small business owners and minority entrepreneurs in the foot and give MSOs the leg up, as New York's timeline for legal weed sales just shifted in a major way. How so? One of New York's top cannabis regulators said the application period for most cannabis businesses would begin in the middle of next year? What? Why? Marking a significant timeline shift from prior statements that the entire adult use market would likely be online by then. But a bit of context, because this does not refer to the social equity licenses that New York has deemed harmed by the war on drugs that they will allow to open their dispensaries first from now until the end of the year. Thing is, I don't believe they'll be able to grow or cultivate their own cannabis, so it's going to be the MSOs that are supplying these new social equity entrepreneurs, but it's just all the more annoying because it's everybody else that is not deemed harmed by the war on drugs that will have to wait till the middle of next year, because this is referring to the entire adult use market. And so just wanted to make that distinction there. And so very annoying. At an event in Yonkers last Thursday, the day New York opened applicants for conditional adult use retail dispensaries, CAURD licensees, and these are the harmed by the war on drugs winners, Office of Cannabis Management Executive Director Chris Alexander was asked by an audience member whether people can start growing and processing weed for sale to retailers. Alexander said that only businesses that receive conditional cultivation and processing licenses can do that right now, and then went into more detail about the licensing timeline. So essentially, this only benefits the MSOs, so we'll take this for now, but again, it only harms the small business owners and minority entrepreneurs in New York that can't even cultivate their own cannabis. They have to buy through the MSOs that have the cultivation licenses already approved. And so, what a mess. Middle of next year, Alexander said, you'll see regulations come out sooner, or what a mess for those in New York, but again, for us investors, we're going to benefit in the long run. Middle of next year, Alexander said, you'll see regulations come out sooner in the next 2 months or so, but middle of next year, you'll see those applications open for cultivation, for processing, and to do the activities you just laid out. While the OCM did not immediately respond to any New York Cannabis Insider inquiry about the timeline shift, but we'll update the story once they do. As obviously, I'm sure no one, especially on the ground in New York, is happy about this timeline shift. So while things look promising for New York, it is again just as soon as they can get things going, that will make things a lot better for everyone in New York. And so with that, out of California, Tom Engel reiterates that California lawmakers sent Governor Gavin Newsom a bill to allow medical cannabis patients across the state to have access to delivery services, despite opposition from local officials. It's among a dozen cannabis bills pending the governor's signature, and this is as of August 31st, but from my understanding, none of these bills have been signed into law yet. So hopefully they will. Hopefully they will have a positive impact on the California industry. Bills on California Governor Gavin Newsom's desk: interstate cannabis commerce, cannabis consumer employment protections, medical cannabis delivery statewide, streamlined record sealing, medical cannabis for animals, industry insurance coverage. And so, a lot of strange things included in here with a lot of positive things, but hopefully these will just have a better impact on the overall legal industry in California and not have a detriment on it and allow the illicit market to flourish thus even further, because sadly, it's just been shitty policies, especially by Gavin Newsom, that has allowed the black market to thrive thus far, and that is why, sadly, we are seeing companies flee California in latest sign of cannabis industry turbulence. And so I will update you once some of these are signed into law, but more information on the individual bills and what they'll all do if you want to grab the link in the description. But just to reiterate that California in particular, and so this is a newer story though as of the 2nd, but I did want to share it because this is the first time hearing of it. California in particular has proven tough for many companies to survive in, let alone thrive, due to an immense underground market, high state and local taxes, and plenty of red tape for businesses to navigate. And while high taxes are to be expected out of these blue progressive states like California, what's far worse is the red tape and big bureaucracy that we're seeing as an effect of these socialist top-down policies, which essentially just suffocate industry and make any small business owner that attempted to even start equally poor, as opposed to creating equal access to opportunity. As so far in 2022, Colorado-based edibles maker Wana Brands pulled out of the California market entirely, a spokesperson confirmed to Green Market Report, while Florida-based Trulieve announced on August 10th that it plans to close at least some of the retail stores it owns in California, and maybe all three. So they're on the fence, but obviously they want to keep some exposure to California, which all these companies still do. And they do say later on in the article that they're not going to leave for good, but just through this turbulence right now, they're trying to avoid it. While Massachusetts-based Curaleaf this week confirmed to Business Insider that it had laid off staff at a Sacramento facility and plans to close it down. But from the sounds of this, we don't necessarily know if it's a cultivation facility as opposed to a dispensary where they're actually, selling. And maybe Curaleaf has multiple cultivation facilities, and so they're closing one, but they're keeping another. We don't know. I don't know the details, but mainly just sharing what this article says so far. And so this just does highlight that the California market is a hell of a difficult ocean to navigate through, it seems like. And so with that, though, they say just say no to some markets, but essentially it's two very blue, progressive, and red tape-filled markets, California and New York. That's essentially, they say, part of a national trend. No, not really. Hunt said the caution is becoming a more consistent theme with cannabis businesses that have a national footprint, particularly in markets facing major turbulence or focusing on social equity such as California and New York. And so while they do say all that, again, just wanted to reiterate, likely will return to California at some point down the road, Hoda said, but it'll take some major landscape shifts before that happens. It's not like we're going to ignore California, but the conditions need to change, and that's everything from regulation, the enforcement, the illicit market, price compression, overpopulation of dispensaries in some areas and no dispensaries in other areas. Hoda said it just needs to settle down a bit. And so essentially you just need some good policy making and good leadership to get this industry back on track. And while I definitely wonder how Cresco is faring in California through these turbulent times, I do like that they focus on cultivation and distribution of their branded products as opposed to retail and having multiple point of sale outlets. And so I do trust that Charlie will be able to navigate us through these choppy times and into better ones. But with that, we got this one from Tom Engel sharing today. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf and Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman launched a month-long cannabis pardon project to expedite relief for people with low-level cannabis convictions on their record. So we do like to see this sort of effort, especially out of those in positions of power from a state like Pennsylvania that has a successful medical program but is yet to reform their adult use cannabis laws. So it's hinting that the sentiment is changing, and hopefully the Senate can get their shit together and pass some adult use legislation in 2023 because they've been talking about that for years. While Detroit, happy to share this news out of Michigan, Detroit cannabis business licenses now up for grabs with the application process open. So good to see Detroit, a city that had said no to allowing dispensaries to open up, now realizing not only just the real estate value, but the overall economic value. And so good news out of Detroit. Another milestone in Detroit's path towards opening the city up to rec cannabis commerce is here with the process for applying for a business license in the city opening Thursday morning. A total of 60 business licenses, including 40 for retail businesses and dispensaries, will be approved during the first phase of applications. As Detroit's recreational cannabis ordinance was approved in April, however, delays in opening the application process happened after companies that own 2 medical cannabis dispensaries in the city sued for being excluded from the application process. But fortunately, a judge motioned for removing the injunction blocking the application process from opening on Tuesday. And so good job, Detroit, as you've got more new cannabis business owners that will help the flourishing cannabis industry in Michigan. And with that, we move over to Florida, the Office of Medical Cannabis Use, looking at new dispensary openings this past week from August 29th to September 2nd. We can see Green Dragon opened a new dispensary location in Pensacola. Liberty Health Sciences, which is owned by Air Wellness, opened a new one in Dania Beach. And then Move, which is owned by Verano, opened 3 new dispensaries in Auburndale, Jacksonville, and Titusville. And if we look up, we can see the qualified patient count for this week rose to 747,395, which represents an increase week over week of 2,136. So the patient increase is going back up over to the 2,000 mark as summer is ending and more people are turning to a safer, non-addictive alternative. So good to see that number going back up, especially week over week growth-wise. And then if we look at the dispensations for August 26th to September 1st, we can see all the MSOs listed in the state, the number of active dispensaries that they have, and the number of milligrams of THC sold, milligrams of CBD sold, and ounces of smokable flower sold from this past week, August 26th to September 1st. So you can check week over week to see whether the MSO that you've invested in is working to increase or decrease their market share in this very competitive state of Florida. And with that, just wanted to share this interesting snippet from Puff Daddy. Focusing on this market is 2022 Florida store growth year to date. It seems like Verano has been the busiest, opening a number of stores trying to compete with Trulieve. And so that's 18 so far on the year. Trulieve with 9 dispensaries, Cureleaf with 9, Green Dragon with 8, Air Liberty with 7, Certero with 6, Sanctuary with 6, Cresco, Sunnyside with 4, HT Medical 2, Jungle Boys 2, Vitican, Insa, Flowery, and Cookies all with 1. And so just found that as an interesting snippet highlighting that, some MSOs obviously see it more beneficial than others to really ramp up. And I have no doubt, again, once adult use is legalized in Florida, that's looking like 2024, or at least that's going to be the ballot initiative. We don't know how soon that's going to be, but that will be a massive growth driver once we get adult use sales, especially with the 21 million that live in Florida, plus the 100 million that visit every year as a travel destination. So lastly, just some great studies to round this episode off as Marijuana Moment highlights. Cannabis doesn't turn people into lazy stoners as stereotyped on TV. Another study finds. So another new study is debunking the stereotype of cannabis consumers as lazy and unmotivated stoners, with researchers finding no difference difference in apathy or reward-based behavior between people who use cannabis on at least a weekly basis and non-users. What's more, these frequent cannabis consumers actually experience more pleasure than those who abstain. Interesting. Tables are turning, as the research published in the International Journal of Neuropsychopharmacology looked at data on 274 adults and adolescents who reported using cannabis 1 to 7 times per week over the course of 3 months. While there's long been a stigma attached to cannabis users, with legalization opponents routinely suggesting that cannabis contributes to laziness and overall apathy, researchers at the University of Cambridge and University College London, two pretty accredited institutions, said their findings are not consistent with that hypothesis that non-acute cannabis use is associated with amotivation. Our results suggest that cannabis use at a frequent of 3 to 4 days per week is not associated with apathy, effort-based decision-making for reward wanting, or reward liking in adults or adolescents, the study says. Cannabis users had lower anhedonia than controls, albeit a small effect size. And study participants took 4 assessments to measure anhedonia, the inability to experience pleasure, apathy, and reward-based motivation and general reward responses. Their results were compared to control group of non-users, and what the researchers found was that cannabis consumers were slightly more capable of experiencing pleasure regardless of the frequency of use, and there was not a statistically significant difference between the groups when it came to apathy. And so there you have it, more findings highlighting that prohibitionists were always full of shit. Now we can at least call them on it as we have the data. And so more information here if you just wanted to pause to look through, or you can grab the full link and go through, as it is a longer article and there's a lot more to it, but they've just more or less highlighting that what we find is not consistent with what we've been lied to and told for a very, very long time. And so with that, a few other studies, I'm not going to go through them all, but you can grab the links in the description if you're interested in looking through them. So thank you, Todd, for sharing. Medical cannabis shows promise as potential migraine treatment. Yes, another potential positive medical use for this plant, as researchers from the University of Arizona published a study that supports medical cannabis as a potential migraine treatment. This one from medicalnewstoday.com. You can grab that in the description if you wanted to read more. Well, another one, thanks Todd for sharing this one. A study concluded cannabis oil might prove useful as an adjunct for potentiating the psychological treatment of anxiety-related disorders. So another reason for CBD and its oil having many potential positive use cases. This one from mdpi.com, so you can grab the link below in the description if you want. Well, this last one, study, Todd Harrison sharing this one, thank you Todd. A study concluded that a commercially competitive legal market may affect and harm the local illicit cannabis market. And so New York would obviously benefit, as you see Governor Kathy Hochul, New York City Mayor, New York would obviously benefit by launching their adult use market sooner than later, and that would help clamp down on that illicit market. The longer they take to launch, the bigger that illicit market grows, because more money flows to them, allowing them to compete, potentially increasing crime, potentially just exacerbating a lot of problems that you get from decriminalizing and not putting people in jail for cannabis, which is right, but also not launching an adult use program so you don't supply the market legally with safe products that that is trusted and And so this one from orca.cardiff.ac.uk, so an English study it seems like, but you can grab the link below if you wanted to read more about that. And lastly, Panama regulates the medicinal use of cannabis. So good to see another country, practicing a bit of common sense, as on Wednesday evening, the president of the Republic of Panama, Laurentino Cortizo, signed an executive decree approving Law 242, which regulates the medicinal and therapeutic use of cannabis, along with its derivatives in the Central American country. This Law 242 was sanctioned by President Cortizo in October 2021. Panama holds the potential of becoming a cannabis hub, given its climate, investment-friendly governance framework, and strategic location with large port infrastructure and well-sedimented trade routes. This country is currently hosting LATAM Cannabis, currently the largest Latin American cannabis conference. And so likely getting a bit of buzz from that, and that's likely why they're being featured in this. But regardless, good to line that up with a bit of cannabis reform, as the presidential decree creates a regulatory framework that allows the use of monitored and controlled access to cannabis, medical cannabis, and its derivatives for therapeutic, medical, veterinary, scientific, and research purposes in Panama, as reported by local media. In addition, Cortizo signed a second decree that creates a national directorate for monitoring the administration and operational activities required for the implementation of Law 242. And so let's just hope that the second decree doesn't overcomplicate things with too much red tape, as it would allow the use of medical cannabis by people with a prescription who will be controlled and supervised through a rigorous and reliable patient registration system. Let's just hope it's more reliable than rigorous, and it gives the people of Panama, access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative if they need it. So love to highlight these steps in the right direction. But that is it for today's episode, folks. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.